1. Introduction. The paradox of the open window. Imagine this. It is the dead of winter. The year is 1910. Outside, a blizzard scrapes the earth clean, and the cold bites hard enough to steal your breath. Inside a small house, you sit hunched beside a coal stove, counting fuel like gold. Every spark matters. Every degree of warmth feels earned. Then you open an old survival manual, and it tells you something that sounds completely insane. Open your windows to stay warm. Pause right there. To modern ears, this sounds like folklore, or a mistake that leads straight to hypothermia. We have been taught that warmth means sealing everything tight, turning our homes into airtight boxes to trap heat at all costs. Close the cracks, block the air, suffocate the house so warmth cannot escape. But generations before us knew something we have forgotten. Because a house that cannot breathe does not hold heat. It quietly loses it. Builders, soldiers, and families who survived brutal winters understood that cold air was not the true enemy. Moisture was. Trapped inside walls, floors, and furniture, it silently drained warmth and forced fires to burn harder just to keep rooms livable. Today on Historia Prime, we uncover the winter venting rule that saved heat for generations. We will explore why sealing your home too tightly can make it colder, not warmer. How damp walls turn into invisible heat thieves, and how a simple European ritual, opening windows for just minutes a day, can reset your home and lower your heating bill even now. This is not about letting warmth escape. It is about stopping heat from being stolen. So if you have ever felt cold in a room that should have been warm, or wondered why turning up the heat never seems to help, stay with me. Because sometimes the smartest way to survive winter is to open the window. 2. The heat sponge, the invisible enemy inside your walls. Before plastic vapor barriers and fiberglass insulation existed, homes were built from materials that could breathe. Brick, lime mortar, plaster, and solid wood allowed moisture to move in and out naturally. These houses were not sealed boxes, they were living structures, and when they stayed dry, they were incredibly warm. But the moment moisture crept in, everything changed. Historical builders had a name for it. They called it a heat sponge. You already know this feeling. Touch a damp towel on a cold day, and it feels far colder than a dry one, even at the same temperature. That chill is physics, not imagination. Water steals heat faster than air ever could. The same thing happens to a house. Everyday life fills indoor air with moisture, cooking, washing, even breathing. In a poorly ventilated home, that moisture has nowhere to go. It settles into walls, floors, and plaster. Once that happens, your heater is no longer just warming the room. It is wasting energy trying to evaporate water trapped inside the structure. This is why some houses never feel warm, no matter how high you turn the heat. The walls themselves are bleeding warmth away. Older builders understood this instinctively. A damp house loses heat constantly. A dry house holds it like a fortress. The solution was simple and surprisingly fast. When you open a window for a few minutes, you are not throwing heat away. You are flushing moisture out before it can soak into the bones of the building. You are turning heat sponges back into heat shields and making it easier for warmth to stay where it belongs. The cold air is temporary. The damage from trapped moisture is not. And this is the first secret behind the winter venting rule. 3. The physics of expensive air. Why some warmth costs more than others. Now let's slow down for a moment and step into the quiet world of physics, because this is where the winter venting rule stops sounding like folklore and starts sounding inevitable. Not all air is the same. In thermodynamics, there is a simple but powerful idea called specific heat capacity. It describes how much energy it takes to warm something up. Dry air is relatively easy to heat. It responds quickly. Add a little energy and the temperature rises. But humid air tells a very different story. Water vapor is heavy, energetic, and greedy. It takes nearly twice as much energy to warm moist air compared to dry air. When the air inside your home is saturated with moisture, it becomes what engineers quietly call expensive air. Here's an image that makes this impossible to forget. Imagine your heater is trying to push something uphill all winter. Dry air is like pushing a bicycle. Humid air is like pushing a loaded truck. Both move forward, but one drains your strength far faster. And this leads us to one of winter's great paradoxes. Cold outdoor air feels damp and brutal when it hits your face. But in reality, winter air is extremely dry. Cold air simply cannot hold much moisture. When you bring that cold, dry air inside and warm it up, something remarkable happens. Its relative humidity collapses. Suddenly, the air becomes light again, cheap again. Now your heater is no longer fighting water, it is simply warming air, and it can do that efficiently. This is why opening a window for a few minutes does not doom your house to cold. It resets the system. It replaces heavy, moisture-laden air with dry air that warms quickly and stays warm longer. The temperature recovers faster than most people expect because the walls and furniture were never given time to cool down. What feels like losing heat is actually removing resistance. And once you understand this, the winter venting rule stops sounding dangerous and starts sounding like quiet engineering genius passed down through generations who could not afford to be wrong. 4. The German secret of Stoßlüften, the 5-minute reset that saves heat. If you travel through Germany in winter, you'll discover a rule so deeply ingrained it is rarely explained aloud. It is not written on walls, it is not posted on doors, but everyone knows it and everyone follows it. It is called Stoßlüften. The word means shock ventilation, and it represents the gold standard of winter living efficiency. Not comfort theory, not modern trends. A rule refined by cold, cost, and consequence. The mistake most people make is trying to be gentle. They crack a window open just a little and leave it there for hours. In Germany, this is called Kipplüften, or tilt ventilation, and both Germans and physicists strongly dislike it, because it does exactly the wrong thing. A slightly open window for a long time slowly chills the walls. It cools the structure itself. The bones of the house lose heat, and once that happens, no thermostat can save you. You have created deep cooling, the most expensive mistake in winter. Stoßlüften works in the opposite way. Instead of being careful, you are decisive. Windows open wide, air rushes through. A cross-draft forms and flushes the room completely in 3 to 5 minutes. Then everything closes again, tight and sealed. And here is the quiet magic. In those few minutes, only the air is replaced. The walls, floors, furniture, and heavy materials, your home's thermal battery, never have time to cool down. The moment the windows close, stored heat pours back into the fresh, dry air. The temperature rebounds rapidly, often faster than people expect. The room feels warm again, but now it is dry, light, and easy to heat. Studies show that slow tilt ventilation can consume up to 20 times more energy than proper shock ventilation. 20 times more, simply by trying to be careful. Stoßlüften is not about losing heat, it is about protecting it. And once you understand this, you realize that this German habit is not cultural at all. It is physics, practiced daily. A survival rule hiding in plain sight. 5. How your stove breathes. Survival lessons from fire and air. For those drawn to the survival wisdom of the past, there is one object that tells this story better than any textbook: the wood or coal stove. A stove is not just a machine, it is a living system. It survives on breath. Every fire depends on a draft, a steady flow of air that feeds oxygen into the flames and pulls smoke safely up and out through the chimney. When this balance is right, the fire burns clean, hot, and efficient. When it is wrong, the stove turns dangerous. And this is where the modern airtight home becomes a silent threat. When a house is sealed too tightly, fresh air cannot enter fast enough. The stove begins to starve. Pressure inside the room drops, and suddenly the draft can reverse. Smoke spills back into the living space. Invisible, odorless carbon monoxide follows close behind. This was not a mystery to earlier generations. Historical householders knew that fire needed help to breathe. A common trick was opening a window on the opposite side of the room, just slightly, to stabilize airflow. This small act fed oxygen to the stove, strengthened the upward draft, and cleared smoke before it could linger. Something surprising happened when they did this. The fire burned hotter, cleaner, and more consistently. Combustion efficiency improved so much that the extra heat produced often outweighed the warmth lost through the open window. Less fuel was wasted, less smoke filled the room, and the air became safer to breathe. This was not comfort thinking, it was survival logic. The lesson still applies today. If you rely on a wood stove, a fireplace, or any combustion-based heat, sealing your house too tightly may be hurting both your fire and your lungs. Sometimes, the safest and warmest choice is not closing everything tighter, but giving the fire room to breathe. 6. The unintended consequence of energy efficiency, when saving heat creates a new enemy. We now live in the age of ultra-efficiency. Homes are sealed tighter than ever before. Walls are wrapped in layers of insulation. Windows lock shut with rubber gaskets. Entire buildings are designed to trap heat so perfectly that almost nothing escapes. And in doing so, we have created a new problem. Modern houses can no longer breathe. This is the hidden cost of extreme energy efficiency. Moisture from a single hot shower, a pot of boiling pasta, or even a room full of people does not disappear. It lingers, it circulates, and with nowhere to escape, it settles deep into walls, ceilings, and corners we rarely see. This is what engineers now call the airtightness paradox. We save energy, but we slowly rot our buildings. We reduce heat loss, but we inhale mold spores we never notice until the damage is done. Across Europe and North America, tightly sealed homes have experienced what experts describe as a mold explosion. Entire structures grow sick from the inside out, not because they are cold, but because they are damp. Comfort is replaced by headaches, allergies, and long-term health risks that cannot be solved by turning up the thermostat. In 2024, researchers in Denmark compared modern mechanical ventilation systems, electric fans, ducts, and sensors, with something far simpler: controlled natural ventilation using windows. Under the right conditions, they found that natural ventilation not only reduced humidity more effectively, but also lowered heating costs and carbon footprint at the same time. The conclusion was quietly unsettling. A rule passed down for more than a century was outperforming some of our most advanced systems. The winter venting rule was never primitive. It was never accidental. It was a form of passive design, refined by generations who understood materials, moisture, and heat long before electricity made us forget them. And in an era obsessed with sealing everything shut, history reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. Efficiency without breathing is not progress. It is decay, hidden behind warm walls. 7. The wisdom of the open window, a rule that refused to die. So what do we take away from a rule that sounds so backward, so counterintuitive, that most of us were taught to ignore it? This simple truth: ventilation is not the enemy of warmth. Poor ventilation is. For generations, people who lived with real winters understood something modern comfort culture forgot. Heat does not disappear just because air moves. Heat disappears when moisture is allowed to settle, when walls grow heavy, and when air becomes expensive to warm. In an age of rising energy costs, smart thermostats, and sealed homes filled with hidden problems, the most powerful tool you still have is astonishingly simple. It is the window already built into your wall. When you master the 5-minute shock vent, you are not letting warmth escape. You are resetting your home. You are flushing out moisture before it turns your walls into heat thieves. You are protecting your structure from decay, and you are making it easier, not harder, for your heater to do its job. History teaches us to question ideas that sound logical but fail in the real world. Sealing everything tight feels sensible until the house grows cold anyway. The next time you feel a chill in a stuffy room, resist the instinct to turn up the thermostat. Instead, open a window. Let the house breathe. Give warmth a fighting chance. If you enjoyed this journey into the physics and survival wisdom of the past, subscribe to Historia Prime. Share this video with someone who is tired of high heating bills and tell them why tomorrow morning they should shock their house for 5 minutes. Stay warm, stay dry, and keep exploring the wisdom history left behind. I'm Historia Prime, and I'll see you in the next chapter.